Welcome in to kick off the tip off with Noah and Gage. Today we're going to go in on Darian Devries and his departure of the Morgantown, West Virginia Mountaineers today, or yesterday evening, following today with Ren Baker and his presser and DeVries' presser in Indiana. Gage, just your first take on the news DeVries was leaving. I know we were kind of in on it earlier with the thoughts of him leaving for home in Iowa, and now we find out he decides to go to Indiana. Heartbreaker, but what's your first thoughts on it?
First thoughts, yeah. Last video we talked about towards the end there. I mean, I even said it, don't fault this guy for taking his dream job and going home to Iowa, who we thought was going to be the hire. But Noah, it turns out it's pretty hard to interview for the Iowa job when you already accepted the Indiana job about a month in advance. This guy's a complete clown, bro. My feelings have changed so much about this guy in the past 48 hours, 24, whatever it's been. This guy's a complete joke, bro. For an entire month, he knew he was going to Indiana. You can get really, theoretical about the whole Tucker DeVries situation where he played just as many games as you could before the medical red shirt kicked into play. That I'm not, too in on as other people, but this guy knew he was leaving us about a month before the West Virginia season concluded, and it definitely played a factor down the stretch of our season. I mean, I don't know. No, this is just it is pathetic, and I mean, I'll just to back up what I just said, right? This is from an inside source over at Indiana, which will be up on the screen as I'm reading. He states on March 12th, 2025 here, there's been a verbal agreement with a coach for almost a month. This is talking about Indiana's opening spot. The contract was drafted and is going to be signed as soon as the coach's season is over. He says, I'm not afraid to say who it is. It's Darian Devries. That's a month, Noah. He knew that for a month. So we're easily looking at like February 10th through the 12th. He knew that information of DeVries going to Indiana.
Yeah, and outside of the Mountaineer fan base, like it sucks to feel kind of like a stepping stone for some of these big schools. But just really looking into it, I hate it for Small. I hate it for Andre. I hate it for these guys who don't have another year to play college basketball, and they were essentially sold out because a guy's got his head. And I'm not saying DeVries didn't come in and try and coach West Virginia up to it, but when you've already accepted another job, your heart isn't where you're currently at, right? Like you're already thinking a little bit ahead. Who couldn't? Like that is impossible to do, to stay grounded when you already know you've accepted a job at another location a month before. And you saw that kind of down the stretch against some teams where you're like, man, they didn't seem prepared for this or ready to play. And you kind of bring it back on when was DeVries getting these guys ready to play? Was he getting them up? But I really just hate this for Javon Small because what a year he had. And then we saw on his Instagram, can't back up exactly what it is. He posted some laughy cry emojis on his
Same with
Instagram.
Andre and Tenor and a couple other guys. I mean, I think that kind of speaks volumes, Noah. I'll let you finish up here with your thought, but I really think that I'm not sure that the players, obviously outside of Tucker, knew that this was happening. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, they didn't know. There's no way they knew. They kept that in. I think Tucker knew. I'm guaranteed Tucker knew that he would be playing basketball in Indiana this following year. I don't think the other guys knew because they haven't been. I mean, outside of Pals entered the portal, but usually when you see a coach jump, you're going to see a lot of players follow. And I think they've lost. DeVries lost a lot of respect from these guys that he coached. Obviously, Small and Andre have no more eligibility, but you haven't seen Sincere, Tenor, a lot of these guys jump in the portal
Very.
yet. Yeah, Amari. I mean, so you haven't saw these guys jump into the portal, which kind of to me is like, man, they don't appreciate what this guy did. Just stepped out on them after accepting the job in a year. Gage, anything you want to hit more on DeVries? I know you're a little bit more heated in the situation. Not that I'm not heated, but I know you're kind of up to bat because kind of going against everything he said he would do in Morgantown. It kind of, especially from the right after he got hired, his pressers, they went a certain way. I mean, what is it as a Mountaineer fan, not as a reporter? How do you feel as a Mountaineer fan right now?
Honestly, not shocked, Noah. I mean, just because we know how the layout of NCAA goes now, we know how players operate, and we know how coaches operate. He left for the bag. He knew this entire time that that he was going to be moving on from WVU at some point. You can come in when you first get this job and say all this bullshit all you want, but when you say things about building a foundation, building a family, making ties in Morgantown. People who support WVU athletics take that to heart. They take that very seriously. This isn't a bottom end ACC, a bottom end Big Ten job where coaches come in and out and fluctuate every couple years. I mean, WVU basketball specifically, before, after Beeline, Noah, we had Huggins for however many years it was. So we were really used to this core I'm not even necessarily the biggest Huggins fan in terms of like coaching basketball, but I acknowledge and understand how important he was to the WVU and Morgantown community. That guy is an all-time legend, DUI or not. So for the first head coach to take the hair from Huggins to come into WVU and spit all this bullshit about this is a place my family and I, we see ourselves for a long time. Get the hell out of here, bro. Don't fill this fan base. This isn't the fan base to fill all this bullshit out with, man. Just keep that shit to yourself. If you want to come in here and use this as a stepping stone, I'd rather you say it from day one instead of pull this shit right here.
No, agreed. And that's the thing for me. I understand that there are going to be better jobs available. Not saying that Indiana in any way in recent success is a better job than West Virginia. I want to make that very clear, Gage.
I want you to get in on that. I want you to get on that too. I'm sure you have the stuff in front of you about the Sweet 16s and all of that stuff.
So in the past, I think since 2000, we have one more NCAA tournament appearance than Indiana, and 3 more Sweet 16 appearances than Indiana. So if you don't go back to the Bobby Knight throw in the chair days, who is Indiana? They aren't a college powerhouse anymore. They're not a blue blood. They are not. And the fact that people really get that in and their fan base thinks they're just the shit. You haven't been relevant in the Big Ten in how many years, Indiana? In how many years you have not been relevant? Michigan has ran it. Michigan State, right? Like, these teams are the teams, when you think about the Big Ten, those are the teams you think about. UCLA now, with the addition of them. You think of plenty of other teams before you think of Indiana. I mean, and that's all. The thing is, DeVries needs to realize, I don't have the number in front of me on the amount of head coaches that Indiana has went through since Bob Knight, but there hasn't been very much consistency there since 1965, Gage. Since 1965, when Bob Knight ran out the Hoosiers, there hasn't been much consistency. So you know what? Go there. Because your 19-13 season that you were all held for in Morgantown, that'll get you the damn boot like it did Mike Woodson this year, Gage. It'll get you the damn boot. So if you think you're that good, go ahead and try it. Go ahead and try it. Because I appreciate what you did in Morgantown, and I think you set a great foundation. But I'm not sitting here and saying you're the next Bob Knight. You aren't.
Since 2000, no, Hoosiers have had 6 head coaches. Mike Davis, Kelvin Sampson, current head coach at Houston, correct?
Yep.
Dan DeKitch, who's an intern coach, Tom Crean, Archie Miller, and then, of course, Mike Woodson here this past year.
That should tell you. Tom Crean being fired should tell Darian Devries all he needs to know. Because I'll put Tom Crean against Devries every day of the week because that's when Indiana was good last. And he got the boot. So it just makes no sense for me for longevity in the game, right? Because if you lose this Indiana gig, no one's coming knocking. You don't see people lining up for Mike Woodson, do you? Or Tom Crean. And there's a reason why. Because once you reach that level, if you can't perform at that level, nobody's willing to pay you what you were getting at that school.
That's a great point, Noah. I think you hit the nail on the hammer, however that saying goes with that. Once you get to that point, and if you don't succeed, it's it's hard to come back down, quote unquote, and find a job or a school to coach at. So I think one more thing to touch on, right? WVU, we as a fan base acknowledge this year, Noah, and you and I can attest to this. We acknowledge that DeVries necessarily didn't have the best roster to work with this year. We understood that. And some of the losses we kind of, pinned on that. Well, maybe we just didn't have the talent. It's not DeVries' fault he got in so late and the transfer portal, yada, 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 right? So he had this sense of like a scapegoat almost, right? Of I had Javon Small. I have Javon Small. I lost my son. Like, what can I really do? I need better play from Hansberry and Powell. And you had this opportunity to bring in what would have been one of the better WVU recruiting classes for basketball in recent memory to build on top of a foundation of Hansberry, Sincere Harris, am I missing Tanner? A couple other guys, Noah. But no, you're scratching all of that. You're taking Tucker to Indiana with you. Which, by the way, Tucker, I would love for you to watch this, right? Because, buddy, you are an absolute sellout, in my opinion. My personal thought, Noah, I think you realized Javon Small was better than you. Tucker, I think you realized he was better, and you couldn't play second fiddle to him. So you sat your ass down on the bench with your $1 million of NIL funds and said, I'm good, bro. I'm good. I'm heading to Indiana next year to get more. I'll be 28 when I graduate college. I'm good, bro. Javon, you take it. Me, daddy, and mommy, we sit down at dinner. We know we're going to Indiana here in a couple months. Get the hell out of here, bro.
Yeah, that's what really gets me too. Is like, even if you were 80%, now I'm gonna say there was probably a shoulder injury. There probably was. He had an existing injury, right? Like, it was an existing. It wasn't something new when he came to West Virginia. But the thing is, for me, if you're 80%, you're 80% besides Javon Small. I mean, that is a solid team, and you weren't willing to put that aside because Indiana came knocking, and you're like, you know what? I could play through this, but I have another year, and that's why you did it. That's why you did it. I'm not saying that you didn't have a shoulder injury, because you did, but you could have played through that, in my belief, because you don't come off playing 32 minutes against Georgetown. You don't come off
to just shutting it down.
To shutting it down. Like, it doesn't happen, right? And nobody saw anything crazy in that game, like, oh, his shoulder got injured there. You can't find it, right? So we know what happened there. Gage, rolling off this, we could probably speak about hours, because we're real Ears fans, about how disappointed we are and upset we are with DeVries. Actually, I'm glad he's gone, because if you were going to use this as a stepping
Not
stone,
meant for this. He
exactly.
he snake in the grass. You weren't meant for this job. We'll kind of get into some people who have some better ties to West Virginia in general, but DeVries, you weren't meant for this. I'm more upset and pissed off about the fact that you came in and made it seem like you were. You put on the mask, man. You came in day one and told everybody what they wanted to hear, just to snake us 4 or 5 months later. Congratulations to you. I know you got all that money. I hope it goes well for you, because I'm praying on your downfall at Indiana. I hope you guys have the worst years in that school's franchise, bro. I'm done, man. I'm done. Indiana basketball, burn to hell.
Just getting into it, Gage. Something I did want to hit on today, after watching an absolute masterclass showing again from Ren Baker. I mean, there has not been anybody in the past 2.5 years that has faced what Ren Baker has, and it's so interesting, because I'm a Mountaineer fan, and college basketball is definitely like a strong point for me, something I watch, and watching Ren Baker get up there, cool in the moment, man. Like, this shit ain't new. He's been around the block before.
And believe me, he had his subtle shots. No, you and I kind of talked about it. He threw in his subtle shots. Just one that comes to the top of my mind. I sat down with DeVries, and talking about how we were going to build, or at first off, talking about extensions. I saw where there was extension. He sat down in February with DeVries about a future extension. And DeVries at that point probably knew damn well that he was going to Indiana. So that's one. And then two, he came out publicly and said, talking about how, him and DeVries have had talks about how they can bring better resources, bring more money to the program, help him get the players that he needs to succeed.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. I think Ren did not come out and say this in this presser. But after offering him, after Ren had to realize something was a little off after offering him extension, sat down with his agent, Gage, sat down with DeVries' agent for an offer for an extension, and there's no acceptance. I know he felt good because I think there was talks about, how to improve the program. But outside of DeVries' side of things, like Ren Baker, if you go back and watch that press conference, what he did is sold West Virginia. If there is a coach on the market that wants to come, that is looking to move, what he did, if any coach watches that, they're thinking, man, we're gonna have money, we're gonna have support money, and let's add
a heck of an
too.
AD. A heck of an AD.
Listen to this. This is the part where you're thinking like, oh my God, Baker might be the greatest ever. $6 million is coming to Morgantown because DeVries. So they bought out DeVries, and his buyout, not only was it 37% of his guaranteed money, additionally, if he left before April 30th, so kind of like a full year on the job is what I kind of take it as. If he left before April 30th, he owed everything that we did for him, buying him out of Drake, his relocation cost to Morgantown, which we obviously afforded and paid for him, and a couple other things. So West Virginia's walking out. West Virginia's walking out with a $6 million bag from this series of DeVries coming in and leaving. So I think it was phenomenal by Ren. Not only in addition of now you have some more resources to go find that coach, but you're only a year removed from a coaching search. So you already have some people you probably talked to last year that you might have not been willing to pull the trigger on, but maybe they had some good years and you know your guy. So I really, really think Ren Baker is the top of tops of AD right now, of an athletic director right now, because there's very few that have went through the turmoil he has. And additionally, I just don't see, like, he even brought it up in the presser. He called national media stations and analysts asking, hey, have you ever heard of a $6 million buyout in college basketball? The answer was no, Gage. No one's ever did it. No one's ever did it. That's Ren Baker.
Another thing, too, my opinion of this whole situation, Noah, it's completely different if, when DeVries takes this job, he publicly comes out with a statement to WVU fans and acknowledges some of the things that we're kind of upset with right now, right? Do you feel the same about that? The fact that he's just gone completely quiet, hasn't said anything to WVU, and I know, you're busy traveling over there getting stuff done for Indiana, but like to just go cold face and not even have a statement or anything for WVU fans right now is just it's piss poor.
Yeah, and that's the thing too. It's like I'm not sitting here saying I understand because you know how I feel about the Indiana job. But if we're talking in location of where his home is, yes, Indiana and Iowa are closer than what West Virginia is to Iowa. I'm not going to sit here and try and sell you on anything different. And I don't know, it's probably the bag that got him there. But with the addition of location to home, I could see why he accepted the job, right? I think there's way more to be promised at West Virginia. I think there's way more stability here. Way more. I understand, but like you said, if you just come out and say, look, I wanted to be closer to home. They offered me money. My goal has always been to coach at a blue blood program. I don't think Indiana's a blue blood, but you can get away with saying that. If you just give a reason as to why you left, rather than just walking out one late night and not saying anything to us. And I think that's something that's rough, and it might hit a little bit of a sore spot because of the way things went down with Rich Rod back then. Really interesting talking point. But I think Rich Rod did it a little bit different, and there were reasons because of resources, as we talked about in previous videos with Rich Rod's leaving. And this one obviously wasn't because of resources as it was he had a destination he'd rather be.
Yeah, man. I don't know, man. We're grown, and a lot of people listening and watching, everybody's grown. We understand the concept of money. Nobody is upset with you over the fact that you're getting a pay raise and going to coach at another school. That's not the issue, in my opinion. The issue is what I've kind of reinforced in this, in our talking here, is how you came in. And I'm sure when you came in at the beginning of the season, your initial thoughts was, I'm going to play out my 5-year contract here, whatever he signed for, see how things go at WVU. I understand that. But then to get to a point in the season where you know for a fact that you're going to leave us and then coach and not saying that it was completely his fault, but our season just down a downward spiral towards the end of the year, ultimately with the loss to Colorado, and we get snubbed, which I'm not saying is his fault. That's a completely different story, but it's just all it's just unfortunate situation.
Well, the thing is that you need to point out here too, with what you said there, Gage, is how much different would this have been if we're in March right now and Indiana's afraid if DeVries doesn't jump to take the job.
They may be looking at another hire.
Exactly.
Yeah, so they may be looking at another hire. He came out and said, Noah, you might have it word for word, or I'll find it. Indiana was very respectful of letting me and WVU play out the rest of our season, something along those lines. And it's like,
but that's just telling you that he was spoke to before the season concluded. So you're pretty much saying, yeah, we tampered. We were there before the season ended, saying, here's what we got. This is our offer.
Thank you, NCAA. This is what we've come to. This is how things are now. It's the wild, wild west. Do whatever the hell you want. Pay whoever you want. This is just how things are, and it's only going to get worse. This may be a hot take, but in my opinion, it's not. NIL has completely ruined NCAA sports. It has gone way too far. There's no restrictions on anything. It's pathetic. NIL has absolutely ruined both the coaching and players. I mean, Tucker DeVries, like, he got paid $1 million, whatever it was, and it equaled out to like $125,000 for the 8 games he played. Like, congrats, man. You got us. You fleeced us. Congrats.
Yeah, very interesting to think how NIL has changed the landscape of college sports. I still fully believe athletes should be paid. I just don't understand. And I think the NCAA is trying to build a regulation on this of how much money, and I think we will get to that point where we're having cap.
There has to be a cap hit. There has to be a cap hit. There has to be some sort of contract system with these guys, whether you're signing with a school for 2 years or 3. There has to be something implemented soon, because every single year, no matter if it's football or basketball, it's essentially free agency for every single player and coach. That's basically what it is. It's free agency every single year.
Yeah, agreed. And that's why I think if they're able to work something out like that, I think it'll be phenomenal. Additionally, I do think, because there's no regulation, it is hurting the sport. Wrapping into a small segment here with the way too early. Actually, I don't know about way too early, because Ren kind of hinted to having a coach in the next few days in his presser, Gage. Within the next few days, he said he was hoping to have had a basketball coach hired. I don't know if that is going to stick, but if you were to put 3 coaches on the block today, Gage, and they don't have to be anything near right, because God only knows who they interviewed last year and what kind of search the agency did. So these might be totally outlandish to the viewers, but just coming from what you know, who are your 3, and I'll give you my 3.
Chester Frazier, immediately off the bat, assistant head coach this past year. I think you're able to regain some of the roster that you had from this past year. Hansberry, Buck Harris, potentially Hawthorne, the 4-star recruit. I think he's primed to get a chance to be a head coach at this level. He's only 38, so he immediately comes to my mind. Don't necessarily know how his relationship is with DeVries and Baker currently. Who knows?
Something to add to that, Gage, not to cut you off there, but just so viewers do know, Frazier did say he was open to staying as an assistant as well. Even though Frazier has the criteria for a head coach, he was open to staying, I think, probably for the right compensation. So that would be good for bringing in recruits. But go ahead, Gage, sorry.
Good to know, yeah. Second, obviously, Jared Calhoun. Calhoun, current head coach at Utah State. He was assistant under Huggins from 2007 to 2012. Spent 5 years as the head coach at Fairmont State and spent some time there at Youngstown State. So immediately he comes to my mind too. And then just kind of a outlier, kind of a fun one, Noah. Give me Richard Pitino just for the aura.
Yeah, that would be the one where it's very interesting. Have you ever heard Richard Pitino's quote about West Virginia?
I have not.
So he said, I guess they were playing in Morgantown, and I think this was a little bit, we would have been really young when this happened, but I guess Pitino's playing in Morgantown, and he comes, and he said that the fans chanted his father's mistress's name for 40 minutes, like the whole game. So very, very interesting. That would be a whirlwind in bringing him in. I do like those three names. I'm going to go with a little bit of a connection here because of the coaching search that happened last year. And Ben McCollum was high on a lot of people's lists last year. So I'm going to go ahead and say Ben McCollum is number one on my list after Will Wade was hired at NC State. I was hoping we would grab Will Wade. But obviously, because DeVries just can't come out like a man and say, hey, I'm leaving, West Virginia doesn't even get time to talk to Will Wade before he accepts a job. And go ahead and mark McNeese out of your brackets, too, because that's a first-round exit now. Additionally, second, I'm going to go with, I would say you're right with Calhoun. I think Calhoun is someone that has a in-state tie. And has done it here and obviously coached at Fairmont State for 5 or 6 years, so he's used to the area. And I think he has some good connection in Ohio, if I'm right. He coached at Youngstown State previously, so I think Ohio,
a place where WVU is historically pretty good at recruiting.
Yes. And then Richard Pitino was also an amazing take there because that is an up-and-coming coach, Gage. For the third guy, and I'm just going to go long shot here. I'm just going to say Ren is Ren, right? Chris Beard.
You've said this before, and I obviously wouldn't mind it. I mean, kind of similar. You had this take about Lane Kiffin and Ole Miss in football, and it kind of comes to my mind, Chris Beard at Ole Miss basketball. A team where, what is your true ceiling in the SEC? Like, are you ever going to be able to compete at the level of, the Kentuckys and Alabama and Florida and Auburn? I mean, the 14 tournament teams, including Ole Miss this year. But, what is your true ceiling in the SEC? So does Chris Beard, look at that and say, well, this WVU job looks really tempting in the Big 12, a Big 12 division where WVU competed once. That he's already ruled once, and a team that competed this year in the Big 12 that really only had one true, I would say one true offensive threat, Noah. At times, Hansberry looked like an okay number 2, but really it was small.
Yeah, and you come out, and Fran Fraschilla always hits at this. West Virginia is and always will be a sleeping giant until someone wakes them up, right? West Virginia has the potential, especially in, we look at this more towards football because Big 12 is a weaker football conference than basketball, obviously. We're not saying that. But I don't know how I want to word this, Gage, but your a credibility goes up so much by just playing in the Big 12 basketball conference. So if you go, I don't know, 16-4, 15-5 in the Big 12, you're talking a 1, 2, 3 seed in the NCAA tournament, and that's possible because as long as you win the games you're supposed to win in the Big 12, that West Virginia unfortunately didn't do this year, you're looking at, like Texas Tech did
You're
this
looking
year.
at you're looking at Iowa State and Texas Tech, a 3 seed.
Exactly. Exactly. So if you are Chris Beard at Ole Miss, how much better can you get? You've brought that program back from the depths, right? And I'm not saying that there isn't backing, but we all know in the South there's always going to be more backing in that football program than there is in the basketball program. Well, I'm not going to say that West Virginia is not going to back the football program a little bit more, but we are a historic basketball program over many years. Like we just rattled off against Indiana. I mean, we have been a dominant college basketball program over the last 20 years.
Absolutely. I agree with your Chris Beard take. And, ultimately we'll probably be doing a video here soon of who they hire. Cause as you said, Ren Baker plans to move quick on this and really no time to waste. So, I'm good on things, Noah. I feel completely distraught for Small and Andre and the guys who are no longer have college eligibility. So I'm sorry for you guys that you had to play with an absolute snake DeVries. So
If any of you guys would happen to see this video in any way and would want to come on here and talk about the feelings of DeVries and how everything went down, Small, Andre, any of you guys want to talk about it, want to get it out to the world, let us know, and we will be here to speak on it. Wrapping it up with that, Gage, we do appreciate everybody watching. We hope to have another video coming out with a hire soon because we all know how the portal works very quickly. Until then, like, comment, subscribe, let us know anything you want to hear, or who do you think the next Mountaineer coach will be? I mean, it's very fun to see different opinions.
sure
Gage,
we'll hear a lot of Bob Huggins.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, Ren Baker did hit on that today again in the presser, Gage, saying that this is going to be another search where we're looking for the future and not focusing on the past. So God bless Bob Huggins and everything he did for Mountaineer Nation. No disrespect, but we do have to find a guy that's willing to stay for some few years. Another thing to add here, just you have to realize that there are, when other teams are looking for a coach and they're coming your way, that is a good thing. That is a good thing. So we'll chop it up on that, Gage. Like I said, like, comment, subscribe, and we appreciate you guys watching. We'll see you next time.